name is Dmitry Bulatov, I'm the curator of this project. Yesterday we had an opening of the exhibition. And those of you who are not yet visited the exhibition have a chance to do it during the day. Today we have a theory part of our project, and besides among our artist participants of the project, the most part of them are also theoreticians or have a lot of thoughts about contemporary state of art and science. Most of them are also professors in different universities. Dr. Professor Pierluigi Carducci and from Urbina Art Academy, and Jens Hauser, curator from Medical Museum from Copenhagen, join us. I would like to introduce also Dmitry Galkin, Dr. Professor my colleague from Russia. He's professor of the National State University in Tomsk in Siberia. I also asked colleague Galkin to moderate all this day, and in order to make a short introduction, very short introduction, I invite my colleague, and we begin. Thanks.
Well, good afternoon, and Dmitry, this is your chance to get another appreciation and applaud as a curator. Dmitry Bulatov is the curator of this. Actually, a bigger set of events with an exhibition, with a conference, and more events happening during 2 months of the of this part of the Art and Science meeting. Thank you, Łaźnia team, for the organizing and managing everything. Just really honored to be here and collaborate with you. As Dmitry said, my name is Dmitry Galkin. I'm going to be a moderator for the whole day. And first of all, let me explain a little bit the schedule, because we don't have printed programs. But you can check online, Art and Science Meeting website. There is today's schedule. So we start with the first session now. We have 4 speakers until 2 p.m. 3 p.m. So we have 2 hours for the first session. Then we have a lunch break. When we have another 2 sessions, hour and a half each. So, and the idea is to mix and sort of make a creative collaboration between academic speakers and artist speakers. So each session has theorists and artists. And please don't consider this event as a academic, serious, very hard to understand conference. It's the cultural artistic event, so it's dialogue, it's the, in some sense, performance or intervention, like our first speakers like to say. And our major focus is what's happening with human beings in the current state of technological development. How we think or rethink humans as biological entities, as cultural individuals, as masters or not really masters of what's happening with technology and cultural dynamics and in our small universe in general. So how we think, and artists and art is one of the major strategies to understand and culturally represent what kind of humanity we are facing in this technological world. And this is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker finally. This is Professor Pierluigi Capucci from Urbino Art Academy, and he's also the leader and the founder of the Noima community and the journal and the publishing house. And he's one of the key theorists in the field since 90s. Okay, please welcome Pierluigi Capucci.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Dmitry Galkin, for the presentation. Thank you, Dmitry Bulatov, and thank you to people that are here. And also thanks Paula and Magda that are trying to translate. I hope that it will not be a very difficult issue. Well, I will start my presentation sharing with you some considerations about the acquisition of the symbolic ability. Symbolic ability is the use of signs and symbols to communicate, like in orality, writing, images and sounds, from prehistory until the many media and new media we commonly use today. The evolution of symbolic communication has been deeply intertwined with human evolution, influencing it in a long process. When was it born? This is a very difficult question, because before the use of images to communicate, it is only possible to refer to anatomic comparisons that are rare and problematic. What can be said is that since humans share, although in a minor part, symbolic ability with primates like chimps, bonobos, orangutans and gorillas, our common progenitor, from whom we all basically inherited this ability, had potentially this inclination. This means estimating symbolic ability roots very approximately to 6-7 million years ago. How symbolic ability developed, leading humans to contemporary technology and culture? It was a long journey that started from direct ostension, that is to communicate with body parts or showing objects and tools that the body can grasp and manage. Then, in a very remote past, inside a world overwhelmed by natural events, very archaic pre-human individuals developed the ability to use a small part of the body to point at the world around us, and it is a rise of indexical science, which can communicate contents that could be distant in space and unmanageable from the body. At the end of the Pleistocene, oral language is able to communicate complex abstract information, and symbolic communication gets a big jump. At the beginning of late Pleistocene, about 45,000 years ago, with Homo sapiens sapiens, the figurative age starts, developing in the late Paleolithic. Images represent an important step in communication and knowledge. Knowledge is recorded outside the body, and it becomes a document. Images can give to ideas, experiences, and behaviors a stable visual form in space and time. With pictures, information and knowledge can be fixed outside the body and transmitted more exactly than words. They can survive to the individual's lifetime. Finally, about 7,000 years ago, the first form of writing appeared. Like in images, in writing, information and knowledge are precisely codified and recorded outside the body in a stable form and become easily transportable and verifiable. Information can travel through time and space and can be shared by many cultures beyond the original one. Knowledge can be easily and precisely reproduced, recalled, shared, discussed, and elaborated. Actions and laws can be remotely transmitted and ruled without the presence of the author of the document. This is a generally accepted history, although it does not take into account some discoveries, for instance in Africa, which probably constitute the most ancient human tools for measuring and calculating, long before the birth of writing. They are the Lebombo bone and engraved bone of baboon, dated 30,000 BC, that is considered as the oldest mathematical device found in the mountains between South Africa and Swaziland. And the Ishango bone, another bone of baboon with engraving dated 20,000 BC, probably used as a calculation tool, found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Image and writing increases the human ability of controlling the present and planning the future. The confrontation with the real world is increasingly transferred into the symbolic dimension that becomes a laboratory where experimenting the connection with the complexity of the physical world. The cultural distance between individual and physical world increases. Symbolic dimension becomes an increasingly autonomous, expanding and restructured universe that often substitutes the physical one. In the laboratory of symbols, it is possible to test hypotheses and simulate their impact on the world, originating a design ability that gives birth to increasingly advanced artifacts. With symbolic ability, our ancestors achieved three main and strictly correlated goals: knowledge, protection, and effectiveness. Knowledge in understanding the environment by transducing it into symbolic models that could be shared, exchanged, discussed, and improved. Protection from the environment, pressure, thanks to more and more effective tools, artifacts, and behaviors derived from increasingly complex symbolic models. Effectiveness on the environment, thanks to projects, tools, and artifacts built from symbolic models which could modify the environment and contrast or distract its pressure. By means of symbols and with the tools they produced, our ancestors began to know, control, and manage the environment, and at the same time they established some sort of safety distance from the physical world, creating a complex anthropic sphere made of knowledge, projects, tools, artifacts, devices, prostheses, machines. Along this line, humankind became able to hugely modify and even degrade its environment. Through symbols, humans have boosted the speed of cultural evolution, allowing our ancestors to reduce the time to adapt to the environment, limiting or shifting its pressure. One main consequence has been the increase in average lifetime, which has almost doubled in the last 100 years. Instead of many generations of hundreds or thousands of years of evolution through natural selection, achievement can require just one generation by adopting and sharing ideas, inventions, projects, discoveries, behaviors, in a process where a key role was probably played by mirror neurons. Symbolic ability generated a huge acceleration in human culture and in the process of creating increasingly complex technologies, tools, and artifacts. Through symbols, humans developed abstraction, consciousness. They created the condition to transcend the physical constraint of here and now and to build parallel worlds based on mythologies, rites, and religions. The realm of possible and the idea of future, with projects and expectations, are born from symbols and can only be described through symbols. Therefore, humans developed in an almost hypertrophic way the ability of projecting, imaging, and designing the future, and ways to live in the future. In fact, we live in the future. A relevant part of our thoughts, ideas, acts, activities, projects is aimed at the future. We can do many examples. We keep calendars and agendas to turn our commitments with the future. We build monuments to project memory towards the future. We make images with that particular modern form of monument that is photography, to create plausible virtual and, to some extent, independent personal and public doubles of ourselves. Some sort of cheap and ephemeral monuments made of paper, which populates the world's imagery and sometimes also its imagination. We trust the weather forecast. Some people pay magicians and astrologers in order to have a glimpse of the future. Money is a kind of infinite promise. We put money in banks to be safe in the future, and banks invest our money in the future, although not always in the right way. We have insurances to protect our life in the future, and some of them are mandatory. Many people make bets, invest money in the stock exchange market, risk and gamble. We got goods on credit or using installment plans. The only task of some companies is to predict the future and sell it to other companies, which in turn put that future in their industrial plans. The very etymology of the word project is from Latin and means to throw beyond. But beyond what? Certainly beyond the difficulties that all projects must go through before becoming real, but especially beyond time. Sometimes I ask my students, are you here for the past, for the present, for the future? Evidently, you think that from your courses you can acquire a knowledge that will be useful in your future life, that fits with your attitudes and projects, and you pay money for it. Anyway, also teachers should be bothered by future and should have a strong motivation in transmitting the knowledge, because when they are old and retired, the student will be the pivots of the society that we will be living in. And what is the meaning of hope? Hope. A typical human construct, and also one of its three Christian theological virtues, if not believing in a future with emerging facts, events and opportunities which fits with our desires. In the centuries, art represented hope many times. A particular subsystem of symbolic language is digital language. Digital language is a simple yet powerful meta device that, in conjunction with suitable tools and machines, allows the representation, description, analysis, management, storage, control, communication, sharing, and forecast of phenomena. In a few decades since the introduction of computers, digital language has colonized the mediascape. Some features of cinema are seemingly holding up to this process, but it is just a matter of time. Digital language works through a rigid opposition, 1, 0, yes, no, with no intermediate states, making discrete the phenomena it represents. One of the most mentioned differences between analog and digital is that the former is continuous, the first is continuous, and the latter is discrete. But is this really true? When comparing the enlargement of an analog and a digital photograph, none of them, albeit at different magnification scales, show continuity or regularity, but rather discontinuity. Both analog and digital pictures show patterns of discrete, non-continuous configurations. The difference is that in an analog photography, the form and size of the silver salt grains that qualify and compose the image vary all along the photosensitive surface, while in the digital photograph, the shape and size of the pixels are the same all along the picture surface. Therefore, the distinction between discrete and continuous cannot be assumed as absolute and indifferentiating between analog and digital, because it is a function of the magnification process. It depends on the scale and resolution at which the phenomenon is considered. What emerges from the comparison between an analog and digital photograph can be extended to a more general purpose. Both analog and digital are discontinuous, discrete. The difference is that digital is discrete regular and analog is discrete chaotic or discrete unordered. We must accept that a consistent part of our lives deals with or is ruled by entities created or activated by humans, but that are not human. From 8 to 20% of all social networking activity is generated by software agents, by bots, and over 50% of circulating emails is generated by bots. Bots are supposed to influence politics. Recently, they have been accused to distort the USA elections. In fact, nearly 20% of all election-related tweets came from an army of influential robots. A study found an estimated 400,000 bots operating on Twitter that were tweeting and being retweeted at a remarkable pace, generating nearly 20% of all election-related messages. After years of disappointment, artificial intelligence is achieving important goals, especially since 2005 with techniques like deep learning, an approach to making intelligent machines inspired to brain sciences. Basic artificial intelligence applications are emerging. An algorithm named Quavo to write the breaking news for Los Angeles Times. Sunspring, a 2016 short science fiction movie by filmmaker Oscar Sharp and technologist Ross Goodwin, was entirely written by an artificial intelligence, precisely a recurrent neural network which named itself Benjamin. An artificial intelligence program called Vital, an acronym for Validating Investment Tool for Advancing Life Sciences, sits in the board of directors of the Hong Kong venture capital company Deep Knowledge Ventures, predicting the success of investments with the same right to vote as its human fellows. If this artificial intelligence has been included as a peer in the governing council of a company, its predictions have proven to be more reliable than its human colleagues once. One step forward is a more distributed approach. Capabilities are distributed over a network and the machines are deeply interconnected. They do not only share information, but also computing power. They can complete each other's function. And since capability and computing power are dispersed, it is difficult to control them. This scenario is imagined from Internet of Things. This kind of group capabilities is present in nature, in bacteria, animal and human groups, and societies. One occurrence is swarm intelligence, the collective behavior of many individuals in natural or artificial self-organized systems. Examples are flock of birds, fishes, and cattle, and this behavior has been copied and applied to movies and other applications. Some artists use this kind of artificial intelligence in their work. Internet of Things, that was recently extended into the Internet of Everything, is a set of technologies to connect to Internet objects and devices in order to monitor, transfer data, and perform actions. Objects and devices acquire an electronic identity which makes them recognizable. They can exchange data with other objects and take an active role by connecting to the net. Internet of Things is the result of an evolution that can be summarized as follows. In the first phase, the phase of connecting and exchanging information, only some sparse desktop computer and PCs are connected. In the second phase, the phase of connecting and exchanging information in mobility, mobile computers are added. Laptops, notebooks, pentops enlarge the typology of connected devices, and wireless networks are added, allowing to exchange information in mobility. In the third phase, the phase of connecting and exchanging information everywhere, that is the present one, networks expand to include mobile connections, and many devices are added: phones and smartphones, music players, e-readers, GPS devices, tablets, and some appliances like television sets, DVDs, and multimedia devices, fridges, while domotics is on the way. This process is accelerating, involving increasingly connected devices. The net is becoming the cloud, with data and calculation operated over a dispersed architecture. In the fourth phase, the phase of connecting and exchanging information everywhere and of controlling the artificial environment, the Internet of Things phase, all objects can exchange data, taking an active role in creating a pervasive and interconnected system. Through Internet of Things, the virtual world maps the physical world, providing an identity to things, places, and to the whole artificial realm. This second nature, the material dimension, increasingly pervasive and extended, created by humankind, will be interconnected. Recently, Internet of Things is becoming Internet of everything, including beyond objects, also people, processes, and intelligent networks. People's interaction on Internet will evolve. For example, it may become common to wear sensors on skin or in clothes that collect and transmit data to healthcare providers. Internet of Things imply deep transformation in the way to manage information, in particular in design. Design is intrinsically relational. It puts in relation objects and devices among themselves, objects and devices with the environment where they are placed into, and objects and devices with the people who use them. Design gives object relations-oriented meaning and tasks that are stylistic, operational, symbolic, aesthetic, functional, communicative, economic, ergonomic, and so on. However, Internet of Things requires to expand the relational dimension of design to incorporate data transit and exchange, feedback states, organizational, hierarchical, and propedeutical issues of information. Internet of Things marks the transition from mediascape to infoscape, expanding the usual idea of design to a design more focused on processes, centered in data exchange among objects, tools, and devices. It is a design of information flows, a transmedia design suitable from contemporary reality provided by big data, by information streams and artificial intelligence forms, and infoscape design. Infoscape design makes functionally working together object, devices, tool, control, and feedback system. It does not consider object and devices as single and separate, but as mutually and operationally interfaced entities. It integrates all functions in stream, focusing on relationship, on information sharing. This implies moving from the perspective of creating and managing sensory objects to creating and managing data streams, to finalizing information processes which are accessible by the senses only in a mediated way. This implies managing the timeline of events, the critical issues, and the data streams, more than a soloist activity, as design is often intended. Infoscape design resembles the direction of an orchestra. But let's come back to the previous picture. The process outlined by this graph, in this graph, will not stop. Internet of Things and of everything would become the most pervasive and effective control system of the territory ever evolved, in this case invented by a species. Since a further step will be the interconnection of natural environment. For all animal species, therefore for humans too, the inspection and control of territory are primary tasks. Internet of Things and of everything will interconnect the artificial and natural environment, pervading them with data flows and making them intimately interconnected. There are already applications that go this way. For instance, for monitoring earthquakes, weather, fires, volcans, climate change, forest, animals migrations, and dangerous species. The control of the environment will be increasingly pervasive and sophisticated through the collaboration of digital, optical, bio, robo, and nanotechnologies. The Internet of Things and of everything will put in opposition the legitimacy of the environment inspection with the defense of privacy. Besides the rapid evolution of many digital-related technologies, There is also an extraordinary evolution of life sciences. Life appears as a complex and elusive entity. Over the centuries, many disciplines have tried to define life's boundaries, but life seems escaping. In fact, there are definitions from many disciplines. Here you can see some examples in the fields of biology, evolutionary biology, neo-Darwinism, physics, biochemistry, geophysiology, and biology of cognition. And there are more, but none of them is exhaustive in defining life. At the human scale, we are reasonably sure that we can distinguish what is alive and what is not. But at the microscopic scale, the boundaries blur. What makes a conglomeration of chemicals or a mass of matter a living organism? Is life possible a function of the scale at which it is observed? Viruses are an example of this uncertain situation. Since they are located at the border between inorganic chemistry and life, and for decades scientists have debated whether or not they should be regarded as living. It is well known that these ancient entities affect all life forms on Earth and often determine those that will survive. Viruses are responsible for birth and extinction of species, and they play a fundamental role in evolution. They are pollinators of genes and trainers of evolution. According to Luis Villarreal, director of the Center for Virus Research of the University at California in Irvine, there is a whole range of intermediate positions between what is alive and what is not. And despite the fact that they are not completely alive, viruses can be considered more than simple inert material. They tend to life. Is life anything to which matter is tending? Is it a state of matter? Life appears, as I said, as a sort of continuum without fences between organic and inorganic. This contiguity between what is alive and what is not should not be surprising. According to abiogenesis and biochemistry, and biopoiesis, life arose from non-living matter about 4 billion years ago. Organic and inorganic are contiguous osmotic universes, and today both can be combined in disciplines like biorobotics and synthetic biology. Art has also crossed this barrier, since the realm of genetic art, which involves DNA in the very broadest sense, include both organic-based art forms and non-organic ones, such as computer simulations of life or genetic processes of evolution and growth. Recapitulating evolution, art builds a bridge between organic and inorganic. Organic and inorganic are two different paths of the living, that also through art can expand humankind knowledge and creations by interacting and interbreeding. Life can emerge from the inorganic realm too. Artificial life has developed the idea of studying life in its organization in single beings, in its social dimension and in its evolution, simulating some feature of organic life by means of computer programs. Like robotics, artificial life operates with a bottom-up approach. Starting from simple, connected elements, it enables the setting up of increasingly complex systems. Unlike robotics, which builds entities with a physical bodies that must act in the physical world, artificial life generates life forms that live inside computers and may eventually act in the physical world by means of effectors. Artificial life frees life from the material dimension, expanding the idea and the limits of life outside the organic realm and making it more general and universal. The living is no longer defined by the matter it is made of, but by the instruction that rule it. Scientific and technological evolution seem leading to an extension of the idea of life, to new living creatures. The general domain of life is becoming increasingly complex, like a wide panorama populated by very different subjects. In addition to the ecosystem made of plants and animals, There are inorganic, immaterial entities from artificial intelligence, artificial life, autonomous agents, software and algorithms. There are inorganic material entities, such as increasingly sophisticated machines, devices and robots. There are natural, organic-based organisms, such as bacteria, whose relevance in the environment is increasingly studied by scientists. There are artificial and expanded organisms obtained by creating, cloning, and modifying natural subjects through synthetic matter and life. There are artificial organisms created from natural subjects, like in the case of deep extinction. There are artificial organisms newly created through synthetic biology and genetics. There are hybrid entities which combine organic and inorganic elements, as in the field of biorobotics, and this list is likely to grow. These entities and organisms originated from human culture could evolve, constituting a third life. Being first life, the natural biological life, and second life, life in the symbolic dimension, that is not to be confused with the famous 3D virtual world. All these processes could lead to an evolutionary step. Summarizing the process of evolution, the rise of symbolic intelligence in our ancestors generated an outburst of tools and artifacts, and deeply changed the interaction with the environment, creating the anthropic world we know. In an early phase, since the Paleolithic, the new forms depend on humans and are mainly human extensions, also increasingly complex. They expand the body, the senses, and the mind, but step by step these forms are becoming autonomous, and due to the pressure of the anthropic environment, they could evolve as living entities, organic, hybrid, and inorganic. These forms are not the result of natural selection. They are selected by human culture and habitat. Instead, the more the anthropic environment expands and develops, the more these forms proliferate, diversifying, and evolving. Nature and evolution seem going beyond the mere organic roots, expanding and overstepping the biological realm in an evolution that originates from human species. Human culture is the pollinator of this new natural genesis. On one hand, our species increases its awareness and consciousness. On the other hand, it is the initiator of the speciation process that brings to life new entity, starting from what it is called artificial, that is the natural peculiar of human species. This is not a new process. It has been historically happening since the dawn of humanity. Humans have always being influenced and inspired by the living, trying to represent, simulate, or emulate it, making something that could sound similar to or behave like the living. In art and craft for millennia, from the first body paintings until today's art exhibition and fashion, nature and life have been represented everywhere. Humans have been copying life and nature's appearance and behavior in their engineering activities, and since prehistory, they have always been modifying and creating life, giving birth to new varieties of animals and plants by crossbreeding the existing ones, and recently through genetic engineering. The living has already been at the center, and also today it is, since algorithms, artificial life, artificial intelligence, robotics, synthetic life, programmable matter, genetic engineering, and nanotechnology take inspiration from the living, or create it. Mathematics and geometry have always been used to copy nature and reality. Since the use of perspective in the first 2 decades of the 15th century, formalized by Leon Battista Alberti in his treatise De Pictura, 1435-1436, artists have been using this technique to represent the three-dimensionality of the physical world onto a bidimensional space. Starting at least from Renaissance, the thrust for reproducing the way physical space is perceived has played a key role in Western culture. Perspective became increasingly complex, not only by simply serving for simulating a physical space, but also for enriching the meaning of the image, for emphasizing some parts of it. As Penofsky pointed out, the rules of perspective can focus the attention to some particular part of the image, giving them a symbolic relevance through the geometric construction, some sort of a second-order symbolic action. The role of perspective is even more nodal today. In fact, also Renaissance perspective has been in use since the first decades of the 15th century, whereas we are still immersed in and influenced by this way of representing and seeing the world. Perspective has been inherited by photography, cinema, video, computer photorealistic images, virtual reality, 3D video games, metaverses. Except holography, which simulates space using the relative differences in light phase that in part explains the difficulties of these techniques to emerge and integrate into the mediascape, all other visual media simulate space through perspective, using the same, also often simplified rules of Renaissance perspective. Perspective codes have become so deeply internalized and pervasive that the simulations which do not follow them sound as unlikely, with some interesting exception. The picture made before the perspective advent, as you can see, we judge this as impossible images. And in the children pictures, since younger people have not yet internalized these codes, and in the artist pictures, because as we know, artists are often interested in breaking codes. Fractals are another example of a scientific way of representing reality. Fractals and are mathematic functions which can simulate the irregularities of physical reality. Clouds, rocks, water eddies, tree branches, mountains, human faces, synaptic connection, pulmonary alveoli, galaxy distribution and shape, natural objects from familiar to exotic, from microscopic to macroscopic, have irregularities as a rule. Benoit Mandelbrot wrote the reference book on fractals, defining and elevating fractal geometry to a scientific survey methodology, and starting ultimately a new geometry of nature. Fractals received a big boost from the advent of computers, and today they are used in many simulations of reality, especially of natural environments and in the generation of landscapes. There are applications in many media, like cinema for instance. But fractals can also be used in studying the way artists work. Jackson Pollock was a major painter in the abstract expression movement and action painting. In particular, he is well known for his style of direct dripping colors on canvas. In 1999, 3 Australian physicists demonstrated that Pollock's patterns are fractals. How could Pollock know a fractal-based technique in 1952, long before fractals were introduced by Mandelbrot book publication in 1973? Of course, he did not know. Fractals can simulate nature and natural phenomena, but also Pollock's body actions, movement, drippings, and more his thoughts and sensibility were nature. Pollock was nature, like plants, animals, like we are. Fractals control that all system of representation and expression, art but also mathematics and scientific disciplines, as well as human artifacts, recapitulate, resonate, copy and celebrate nature. In fact, with the increasingly complexity of artifact, models imitate form, function, dynamics, contents, and efficiency of the living and nature. The living is the best model when making tools, machines, devices, organisms, which beyond being useful have to survive damages, errors, defects, and viruses. They have also to be able to observe self-repairing to a certain extent, to autonomously work in and adapt to the environment, to interact with unexpected situations and hitches like the living normally does. The living is the best model because it has demonstrated its efficiency, in the last 4 billion years of evolution. It has experience of the world. In the last part of my intervention, I will try to present some sort of double relativization process. Today, humanity is engaged in a profound rethink about its role, the relationship with the environment, the resources consumption, and all related responsibilities. From a general point of view, this is embedded in a wider relativization process which is taking place at 2 levels, on and outside Earth. This process is evident in the sequence of models that have historically been used to describe the world. According to Western narration, the geocentric system was proposed by Greek astronomer Exodus of Cnidus in touch with ideas of his mentor Plato, and later it was perfected by Aristotle and especially by Hipparchus of Nicaea in the 2nd century BC and Ptolemy in the 1st century AD, quickly replacing the archaic cosmography. In Ptolemaic model, which remains in vogue about 2000 years, Earth is the center of universe. This model is put in crisis by Copernican model that instead puts sun in the center of the universe, dismantling the centrality of Earth. Enunciated in the first half of 16th century, this theory, which resumed the heliocentric hypothesis proposed in the 3rd century BC by Aristarchus of Samos, was endorsed by observation and data collected by Tycho Brahe, who however remained a Ptolemaic supporter, and by Galileo's telescope. Further relativization occurs at the birth of cosmology in the first decades of 20th century, when the solar system is inserted into a peripheral galaxy, the Milky Way, and the existence of many other galaxies is proven. Thanks to astronomers like Slipher, Friedman, and Hubble, the idea of an expanding universe is introduced, and in 1927, Lemaitre, a Belgian priest, proposed the Big Bang theory. Finally, recent studies have shaped a vast universe evolving in space and time that can be represented until very remote times. To this relativization process outside Earth that moves us from the center of the universe to a periphery of a dispersed vast panorama corresponds a similar process inside Earth. In the beginning, humankind was put on the top of living creatures. In Scala Naturae, the chain of being, which Raymond Lull represents as a stairway from lower to higher order of beings, humans are just before sky, angels, and God. Darwin provided a new contribution to the relativization process by depriving human species of this position at the top of the pyramid. All living beings, including humans, are not fixed and immutable. Instead, they evolved from a remote group of common primeval organisms in a process that started about 3.8 billion years ago. Nature as a story and an evolution. The relativization process has been emphasized by genetics. Every individual, whatever the species to which it belongs, is unique. So all individuals are pervaded by the same matter and the same processes. According to the geneticist Edoardo Boncinelli, many discoveries have brought to light the incredible unity of living beings. The fundamental processes and mechanisms that control them are essentially the same in all species. To make a sturgeon, a frog, a mouse, or a man is required programming and coordinated action of a number of development genes which the animals of all these species have in common and which are also in the genetic heritage of insects and shellfish. But there is an even more general relativization level that can possibly converge the two. Some time ago, I read an article by James Geach entitled "The Lost Galaxy." The author is an astronomer who studies the evolution of galaxies, and in his article, he wonders about a lack of matter, of ordinary matter, in the total mass of the universe, of the galaxies. The common idea of galaxies is of separate islands suspended in a dark, empty space with no interconnection, no matter exchange, like in Immanuel Kant's idea. But this model is incorrect. Galaxies are not closed systems, and the space among them is not void. In fact, the matter that results as lost reside in intergalactic space, and it is continuously exchanged among galaxies, dynamically moving from one galaxy to another in a cycle that has been operating since the Big Bang, 14 billion years ago. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Computer simulation suggests that half of the matter currently present in the galaxy of local universe has crossed the intergalactic medium from one to many times. Sorry. Okay. At the end of the Geek's article, there is this sentence: the baryons that make up your body have participated in this cycle for nearly 40 billion years. The matter within your fingernails could have formed in stars in other galaxies, and then spent billions of years exiled in intergalactic space before coming to rest in our solar system. This article makes scientifically and also poetically explicit what is trivial. Obviously, all atoms that make up the universe, and therefore Earth, living beings, artifacts, machines, and humans, must have a common origin. And, as we know, stable atoms are eternal. So we are literally made of the same basic matter of stars, which is shared by all our ordinary universe. And the atoms that make up our body will continue to live in new form after we die. We are all sons of stars, and this, to me, sounds profoundly inspiring. Thanks to symbolic acquisition, human species has made almost ineffective natural evolution, moving away its pressure. While evolution has no finality, and it is based on momentary success, on present time, human species is consciously overwhelmed by projects and goals, often set in a long-term future. Future is a place for invention, stories, and visions, experiments. It is a realm of the as-if. Humanity compulsively and continuously reimagines itself in the future, trying to address it and to make it favorable, escaping the finitude of the present and disseminating memories of itself, also through art. The symbolic hypertrophy gave birth to a huge number of cultural variables, like religions, membership, beliefs, languages, values, visions of the world, generating pseudo-species that pursue different and often violently conflicting purposes. Cultural evolution has made human species an abnormal member of planet Earth, the last remaining branch of genus Homo, the conqueror of an environment, and today the exploiter of a unique, immense ecological niche whose resources is intensively dissipating. And I finish with this sentence: by the anthroposcape, but the anthroposcape could not last forever. According to some scholars, the price of symbolic hypertrophy, the price of language, would be the end of human species. Its future magnificence would be the cause of extinction. Humans are not essential to nature, and some scientists have imagined Earth without humanity. Of course, nature would go on also on without humans, as it has been happening on Earth for a large majority of time. In the turn of geological times, human biology and a large part of devices and artifacts would be quickly reabsorbed into the biology of Earth. Perhaps, to the human short parable, could survive a part of its culture, the life form that humanity created from itself, its true legacy, its genius. Thanks for listening to my presentation. I hope I have not went too much.
Oh, thanks a lot for just being right on time. Just excellent beginning, and thank you for the cosmological opening of our conference. And we have some time for questions, comments. So if you
Have any questions, please? No questions? You know, I really wanted to have some better feedback, but you never know who is in the electrical. So one of the ideas was to have a paper-based feedback. So you guys take a piece of paper and write like short thing or keywords or comments. Would you like to do that, or just to be more engaged, or just too playful for serious people? Okay, I'll try it for the next session. Okay, let's try.
Okay.